Just after becoming Prime Minister, David Cameron went to India. The aim was to drum up trade, and he went mob-handed. Dave's posse included George.
What 500 million Indians do not have is access to banking services.
Vince went along too.
The companies operating out of Britain need to operate flexibly.
But most controversially, the 6, count 'em, cabinet ministers also included Andrew Mitchell, the Development Secretary. The aim of the trip was to boost exports, chiefly to sell the Indians Typhoon fighter planes. For his part, Mr Mitchell spoke of the significance of Britain's aid programme to India, reportedly adding,
"The focus is also about seeking to sell Typhoon. The relationship is a relationship you have to take in the round."
The meaning was fairly explicit, that buy our aircraft and we will continue to provide you aid. I think it was, as I said, it was not a very subtle way of saying this.
Of course, he denied that emphatically. He'd say there isn't that linkage there.
Well, I don't expect him to do anything else.
In a parliamentary select committee last week, Mr Mitchell explained how he saw his role.
The specific point you make about Typhoon was that when I travel, I regard myself as a cabinet minister batting for the whole range of British interests, not just development. And certainly wherever I go, I seek to promote British interests in whatever form they come.
The issue here is that aid's supposed to be for the relief of poverty, and by law should not be used to gain commercial advantage. When Andrew Mitchell talks of aid and trade and relationships in the round, others say it shows he just doesn't get it. There is no round and shouldn't be any round.
We're extremely worried as to how the government's been behaving on this. Over the last 2 years, you've seen a perversion of British aid. It's being drawn away from the needs of recipient countries, from the needs of the poor, and instead it's being used more and more to serve the needs of British business or British strategic interests.
Like where?
So, for example, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, the aid is obviously needed in those countries, but increasingly it's being used to back up British strategic interests, British security interests, rather than the needs of the poor.
What's wrong with that?
The problem is that that's the beginning of a slippery slope.
The controversy over the Indian trade trips also raised questions about India's position as the leading recipient of UK aid. Some ask whether a nation with a burgeoning GDP and more billionaires than Britain needs hundreds of millions in development cash.
It's a very controversial topic, but India can, I think, do without aid now because it's doing well economically.
But you've got an awful lot of people surviving on less than £1 a day, an awful lot of very, very poor people.
Well, we've got people surviving on less than $1 a day. A pound is being very ambitious. I think 77% of India lives on less than $1 a day. Out of every rupee, only 15% of it actually reaches the people it is meant to reach. The 85% is siphoned off by officials or by corrupt organizations. So corruption is basically the problem. It's not that there is not enough money going around or not enough food or not enough grain going around. It's just that it disappears into corrupt pockets.
The bit of payoff, Mr Cameron may have batted for Britain with Mr Mitchell as his partner at the crease, but now it seems the Indians want to buy their jets from France instead. It's just not cricket. Bull to that.